Hey there, Math Aces, and welcome to Mr. Ace Math. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about unit rates. And as you can see in the video breakdown, there's definitely a lot to cover. So, to make things a little easier for you, in the description below, you'll find this video breakdown with timestamps next to each part. Feel free to use that to go to wherever you need to go. First, we're going to go over what rates are. Then, we'll use that information to go over what unit rates are. After we go over unit rates, we'll go through two examples, followed by an important note. In this part, I go over an example of how important order is when you're talking about unit rates. After that, we'll have the pause and practice, where you'll have 8 questions to try on your own. Once you tried those, you can go to the next part of the lesson, which is where the answers are revealed. And then finally, we'll have the reflection, where we review everything you learned from this lesson. But in order to be successful in this lesson, there are 4 things you really should know. First, you should know the basics of ratios. Then, you should know what rates are. If you don't know that, it's okay, because we go over it briefly in the beginning of the lesson. Then, make sure you're comfortable with creating equivalent ratios, and most importantly, make sure you're very comfortable with division. So make sure you know those, and let's get started, Math Aces. First of all, what exactly is a rate? Well, a rate is a special kind of ratio where one unit is measured in terms of another unit. In other words, there's 2 different units of measure. For example, let's say we have this here. This says you can travel 510 feet in 30 seconds. This is a rate because we're measuring how many feet are traveled in how many seconds it takes to travel that many feet. And rates are written using the fraction form of ratios. So we'll put 510 feet in the top of the ratio, then we'll put the fraction line, and the 30 seconds in the bottom of the fraction. Notice how with the rates, you always include the units of measure when you write it. It's not just the numbers. So this rate is 510 feet in every 30 seconds of movement. And again, it's a rate because you're measuring how far you're going by how long it takes. And that's specifically feet per seconds. Let's take another example. Let's say you pay $20.40 for 6 pounds of fruit. This is also a rate because we're measuring the cost for how many pounds of fruit there are. And how do you think we would write this rate? We'll put the cost, $20.40, in the top of the rate. Then we'll put the fraction line, and in the bottom of the rate, we'll write the number of pounds of fruit, which is 6 pounds of fruit. Now that we've gone over what rates are, let's go over what a unit rate is. A unit rate is a special rate measured out of every 1 unit. Like we said before, rates are shown using fraction form. This means that we're going to have to make the bottom of that fraction 1. So let's say that we have this example again. Well, remember that rate was 510 feet over 30 seconds. And it's a rate because we're talking about how many feet are traveled in every 30 seconds. But if we're asking for a unit rate, we want this bottom to be 1. We don't want to know how many feet are traveled in 30 seconds. What we want to know is how far do you travel in every 1 second. And in order to do that, we have to divide by whatever the denominator is. The denominator here is the bottom of our rate, which is 30 seconds. This means to find the unit rate, let's start by dividing the bottom by 30. And 30 seconds divided by 30 will equal 1 second. That's exactly what we want. And back when we were originally working with fractions, however we change the bottom of the fraction, in this case our rate in fraction form, we're going to do to the top. So since we divided the bottom by 30, we're going to divide the top by 30 as well. And 510 divided by 30 equals 17. So we would say that the unit rate is 17 feet per second. In this example, we're going to pay $20.40 for every 6 pounds of fruit. That's a rate where we're paying $20.40 for every 6 pounds of fruit. So $20.40 will go in the top of the rate, then write the line for our fraction form, and then write the 6 pounds in the bottom of our rate. This is a rate, but we want to know what the unit rate is. The unit rate isn't asking how much you pay for every 6 pounds of fruit. The unit rate is asking how much you pay for every 1 pound of fruit. And to make the bottom of our rate 1, we're going to have to divide by the bottom of the rate. And that here is the denominator 6. So we'll start by dividing 6 by 6, and that gives us 1 pound of fruit. Now whatever we do to the bottom of our rate, we do to the top. So we'll divide $20.40 by 6. And when we do that, we get $3.40. So this means that we'll have to pay $3.40 for every 1 pound of fruit. And if we were to say that in a sentence, we would say the unit rate is $3.40 per pound of fruit. Also, it's important to remember that when you read a unit rate, you don't have to say the 1 to represent the 1 unit you're talking about. So instead of saying $3.40 per 1 pound of fruit, we could just say $3.40 per pound of fruit. Here's one thing I really want to point out because it's really important. Order matters whenever you're talking about unit rate. So let's say we know that 12 apples cost $3. If we ask how many apples per dollar, it's a totally different question from asking how many dollars per apple. They are both unit rates, but they're measuring and mean totally different things. Because when you're talking about how many apples per dollar, what you're saying is for every $1, how many apples can you buy? And when you're asking for this unit rate, how many dollars per apple, you're really finding out how much one of these costs. They might sound the same, but they're actually very different. So let's answer this unit rate question first. Because we're asking how many apples per dollar, that means the apples will be the top part of our rate, and the dollars will be the bottom part of our rate. So because there's 12 apples, that will go in the top of our rate. Then we'll write the fraction line, and then we'll put the number of dollars, and that's 3. And just to be clear, this means we have 12 apples. And those 12 apples cost $3. So to find the unit rate, we'll divide by the bottom value, which is 3. And 3 divided by 3 gives us $1, which is perfect because that's exactly what we're looking for. And then we'll divide the top the same exact way. And 12 divided by 3 equals 4 apples. So the unit rate is 4 apples for every $1. And we would say the unit rate is 4 apples per dollar. And here's exactly what that looks like. Because 4 apples cost $1, I'll bring this dollar over here and put these 4 apples with it, because this is 4 apples for $1. And then here we also have 4 apples per dollar. And here we also have, again, 4 apples per dollar. So now let's find this unit rate. How many dollars per apple? Because we're talking about how many dollars per apple, we're talking about the dollars first, which means that will be in the top of our rate. So we'll write $3 on top, then our fraction line, and then the number of apples in the bottom of the rate. So it's $3 per 12 apples. Technically, that still means the same thing. We have 12 apples, and those 12 apples cost $3. But here's where it's going to be different. Let's start by making this a unit rate by turning this 12 into 1. To do that, we're going to have to divide the bottom 12 by 12. Because 12 divided by 12 equals 1 apple. And that's exactly what we want, the cost per apple. Since we divided the bottom by 12, what do we do to the top? Well, we do the same exact thing. We divide that by 12 as well. And 3 divided by 12 equals 25 cents. So we now know that it costs 25 cents for every 1 apple. And if we were to read that, we would say the unit rate is 25 cents per apple. Here's what that means with our dollars and apples. We'll take this dollar here, we'll bring 4 apples to it, and then we'll max these up as well. Now, it looks like the same thing as before, but it's a little bit different, because now we're talking about the dollars per apple. Right now we have 4 apples, but remember, if we've got $1 for every 4 apples, this means that it costs 25 cents per apple, which is exactly what our unit rate tells us. So again, even though they sound like they're the same thing, they're definitely not. This question is asking for the number of apples for every $1. When we did the math, we found out that that was 4 apples. So we would say the unit rate is 4 apples per dollar. But this question is asking for the cost for every 1 apple. And we found out that that was 25 cents. So we could say the unit rate is 25 cents per apple. And they're very different answers to very different unit rate questions. So here's your pause and practice. Just pause and practice. Hit the pause button and try these questions. When you think you're done and have the right answers, hit the play button to see if your answers are correct. Ready, set, go. So let's take a look at our answers. Number 1 is 250 kilometers per every 1 hour, also read as 250 kilometers per hour. Number 2 is 18 4/10 grams of sugar per every 1 can of soda, also read as 18 4/10 grams of sugar per can of soda. Number 3, 222 calories per every 1 serving of pie, also read as 222 calories per serving of pie. Number 4, 35 students per every 1 bus, also read as 35 students per bus. Number 5, you ran 4/10 of a lap per minute. Number 6, you ran 2.5 minutes per lap. Number 7, you make $12.50 per hour. And number 8, you worked 8/100 of an hour per dollar earned. So what was your score out of 8 questions? Leave it in the comments below. So what did we learn today? A ratio that measures one unit in terms of another is called a rate. A rate measured out of every 1 unit is called a unit rate. A unit rate always has a denominator of 1. To find the unit rate, you must divide by the denominator. I hope this helps. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Questions? Comments? Leave them down below.
And thanks for using Mr. Ace Math. Don't just pass math, ace it.